Foreign countries that have been ripping us off for years are ecstatic. They're so happy. And they're dancing in the streets, but they won't be dancing for long, that I can assure you. Today I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122, over and above our normal tariffs already being charged.
U.S. President Donald Trump speaking after the Supreme Court ruled on Friday against some of his tariffs. Since then, he's ramped things up even further, posting to social media. He's increasing the global tariff rate to 15%. This doesn't affect Canada dramatically, given that many of the products that we sell fall under CUSMA and are exempt. Sectoral tariffs, though, do remain in place. What does it mean for that? How could it impact the review of CUSMA? Okay, let's bring in our Sunday Scrum. An hour and a half of hockey, and now let's talk about some politics. Ian Bailey is a reporter for the Globe and Mail in Ottawa. Rob Russo is a writer for The Economist, former CBC Parliamentary Bureau Chief. Rob Shaw, a political correspondent for CHEK News. He's in Victoria. I mean, it's not like you guys weren't going to be watching the game anyway, so I appreciate you waiting around to do a little bit of politics. And it's interesting because we're going to talk about the tariffs, but that's kind of why the game was so important anyway, because we are in this moment, right? And so it would have been important regardless, but it brings on sort of a different bit of meaning. Ian, I'm going to start with you on whether you think this ruling on Friday and the president's angry reaction after that changes anything in terms of how Canada is going to, go through the review, try and get some of the sectoral tariffs lifted.
Well, first off, Rosemary, kudos to Team Canada for a tough fight in the game. They left it all there on the ice. A win would have been nice, but no one can fault them for the energy they put into that competition.
For sure.
As for Donald Trump is clearly in a very angry, truculent mood. And I think that is going to complicate CUSMA. It's going to complicate that review in ways that we may not even be able to see yet. I mean, I think there's the risk of new tariffs, but also, I mean, we saw this Gordie Howe Bridge thing, came up out of the blue. And I think the concern has to be about what other creative ways can Mr. Trump find and put out on Truth Social to cause grief for the Carney government, and actually for Canada in general. Mm-hmm. So I think we're entering a really challenging phase. Republicans are raising concerns about Donald Trump, and he's under pressure, and who knows where this can go. I also think that this raises some political challenges here at home. Obviously for Mr. Carney, who's leading the government and working through these files and has to keep Canadians on side and win their approval handling this file. Also, though, for Pierre Poilievre next week, he has a big speech, I understand, at the Economic Club. He's going to be talking about foreign policy. He's got to find a way to be on side or engaging with Canadian voters, especially with the issues he's facing on floor crossers and something credible to keep voters on side. Lastly, the NDP. They'll have a new leader in March, and whoever that leader is going to also have to navigate this matter, and in a way also have to deal with Donald Trump's anger. So things haven't gotten better. They're going to be very chaotic going forward.
I will say the president has posted about the game, congratulating the team, but he also, at the end of it, he said lots of winning, because I guess Friday certainly wasn't a win for him, Rob, with the Supreme Court. I talked to Frank McKenna, that was the other bit of politics we squeezed into the show, who actually thought that it was, positive might be too strong a word, but it is part of a story of things turning a little bit against Donald Trump. I take all of Ian's points. I think they're excellent ones. But there are also things that are sort of fraying a little bit when it comes to this.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think that's part of the reason why you've had a muted response from the government of Canada. Let's look at some of the erosion we've seen in Donald Trump's power, authority, the ability to threaten. Number one, February 11th, former Ambassador McKenna made mention of this. 6 Republicans in the House of Representatives voted with Democrats to have the tariffs removed from Canada. That act of defiance, unusual. Then there's the court. That has bracketed his power. Sure, he can still bring in tariffs, but that power is bracketed, except for the Section 232 kinds of tariffs that we're under. But an important reminder that the checks and balances system is still alive there. And then there's the New York Fed. Not a lot of people paid attention to this, but there was a report from the New York Fed last week that enraged him that said that 90% of the cost of tariffs are being borne by U.S. business and American consumers, that it's weakening the U.S. dollar rather than strengthening it. There's no increase in manufacturing. So if there's any growth in the U.S. economy, it's in spite of tariffs. And that gives the sort of economic class more ammunition to attack these tariffs. If I'm Pierre Poilievre, however, Rosemary, I get up in the House of Commons and the first question I ask of Mark Carney is the RCMP launching an investigation into Connor Hellebuck's thievery of that game that we just watched?
I didn't know where you were going there, and I was worried, but it ended in the right place. Rob Shaw, how are you reading this? Because it is, I don't know. Obviously, the president's mad. And as Rob rightly points out, the response was muted, but it's also happening in the broader context of the Prime Minister heading off to India, Dominic LeBlanc coming back from Mexico. Like, there are other things at play as we wait to see how this decision, how he's going to respond to this decision and what it will actually mean for the CUSMA negotiations.
Well, it does, I guess once again sort of validate the overall approach of the federal government to find other trading partners because the United States is just not reliable anymore. Donald Trump didn't bring in tariffs, because of a particular section of a part of a law from the 1970s that he happens to believe in. He brought them in as a weapon to use for a negotiating position to achieve what he wants and to make a lot of money for the government. And so I don't think that this ruling changes what is the chaos theory of the Trump government. He has moved off of this particular law onto another law. If that one is blocked, he'll move on to another one. If tariffs become too hard, he'll find something else. This is the most powerful country on earth that has almost unlimited ways to make life painful for Canadians. And I think, the overall strategy of not engaging Trump in public by insulting him necessarily, because you have to also negotiate with him, is one that Canada should still keep in place. And Mark Carney seems to be still on that path as we head towards CUSMA, which is going to be rough. It doesn't look like there's any benefit in Trump's mind to CUSMA. He looks like he wants to continue to hammer sectorally, and why locking up 90% of Canadian goods in a long-term stable trade deal when he thrives on instability. That's going to be really tough for Canadians to get through that.
Okay, I'm going to keep you for one more round, but I'd like to talk about the floor crossing, which seems like about 3 years ago. I think we have a little clip of this. Take a look.
For me, it felt disingenuine and quite simply wrong to be sitting on the sidelines anymore. So I reached out to the Prime Minister's office and will be joining his caucus.
That's Matt Jeneroux, the third MP who has left the Conservative caucus for the Liberals. Ian, how damaging is this? Like, what do you think is happening in Pierre Poilievre's office or in the caucus right now to try and, I don't know, I think that they thought it was over, and now here we are with yet another person.
Well, Pierre Poilievre is out there doing the job of being the opposition leader, talking about affordability, questioning the Prime Minister. He's doing the speech next week, and yet members of his team are crossing the floor. And every time that a member of the team crosses the floor, it undermines, because whatever Mr. Poilievre is saying or doing that day, because, this is very challenging for him. It's kind of a fundamental job for the leader of the opposition for any federal party leader to hold the team together. To use a hockey analogy on a hockey day, it's like a game where the players on one side are deciding to go over to the other team on the ice because they like the other team better. The Conservatives could propose legislation, I suppose, to make floor crossers go through by-elections as sort of a tool against this situation. But the reality is that floor crossing is part of the Canadian parliamentary tradition. I was looking back at the history of this thing, and it's pretty routine. But this has been very damaging for Mr. Poilievre. 3 MPs from different parts of the country is really bad. And I have a feeling, and my gut says, if this goes to 4 or 5, then this becomes a really immediate existential crisis for the federal opposition leader. But I am not really sure there is anything he can do at this point.
Yeah, and to be clear, there is talk that there are others, perhaps not from the Conservatives, but that this isn't quite over yet. I've got about 2 minutes left, so Rob Russo, you first.
Well, I think this was more like a floor ambling than a floor crossing. It happened very slowly and drawn out over time. I wasn't stunned by it. The timing was a surprise. I think the more dangerous thing for Mr. Poilievre is Mike Dawson, the New Brunswick MP, who on his own decided that he was going to freelance on increases in pay and was heckled by his own caucus, and Jamil Javani. Those two MPs acting as mavericks, as rogues in effect, suggests that Mr. Poilievre does not have any effective distant early warning on his system on his caucus. That, for me, suggests that he doesn't know what's going on in his caucus. That represents a danger to his leadership. As far as floor crossing goes, I'm going to give you four names: David Emerson, Wajid Khan, Joe Kamuzi, Leona Alslev, all four Liberals that crossed over to the Conservatives under Stephen Harper. And I remember nothing but delirium and delight from the Conservative benches when that happened.
Quick last word to you, Rob Shaw.
Yeah, floor crossings don't go well usually for the people who do them. But it's tough for the Conservatives because in a sense, it looks like Pierre Poilievre, the new version of him, seems to be on the right track. I thought he looked almost prime ministerial in his response to Tumbler Ridge and his new approach. And yet there'll be a lot of pressure with losing these MPs to revert back to being that kind of jerk version of Poilievre because of that pressure inside the party. Maybe this isn't working. And I think that's the real risk to the Conservatives: stay the course or blow it all up. And a weakened leader becomes a ripe target for disgruntled backbenchers. We've seen it again and again. Yep. People with nothing to do other than sharpen their knives, whose names you've never heard of, suddenly appearing out of the woodwork going for the leader. And that's a tough spot for any leader to be in, especially right now.
Ian Bailey, Rob Russo, Rob Shaw, thank you for waiting around all that time. You are gold medal winners to me, just to really milk that a little bit longer. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday.